The night air at Baltimore, Washington International was thick with jet fuel and the mingled scents of coffee and cinnamon pretzels. Neon arrival boards flickered as families crowded the terminal, banners waving, children squealing. Staff Sergeant Luke Harrington stepped off the plane, shoulders still stiff from 14 punishing months in Afghanistan. He'd pictured this moment in 1,000 dusty daydreams, Megan smiling through tears, their 3 kids sprinting into his arms, the noise of war replaced by laughter. But the gate was empty. Before we dive into this story, kindly subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're watching from in the comments section, your support helps bring more chilling stories like this. Now let's begin. Luke scanned the crowd again, a soldier's reflexive sweep. No Megan. No children. Only a paper sign with his name held by a neighbor from their Maryland street. Her face said everything before she spoke. Luke. I'm so sorry. They're gone. Within hours he learned the bare facts. Megan had emptied their joint account 2 weeks earlier, left a short note, "Don't look for me," and disappeared. The children's school record stopped cold. No forwarding address. The Army granted Luke emergency leave. He drove through the night to their home, every mile tightening a knot in his chest. The house was stripped of life, closet rails bare, photo frames missing. Only the smell of Megan's lavender detergent clung to the curtains, a ghost of ordinary days. He paused in each room, memories ambushing him, Emily's giggle in the hallway, Jason's toy car jammed beneath the sofa, bedtime stories whispered against a winter wind. He filed a missing person report, but the detective's shrug chilled him, adults can leave if they want. No crime here, Sergeant. Months bled into years. Luke scoured social media, hired private investigators, and followed dead-end tips from strangers who might have seen her in grocery stores or roadside diners. Each call jolted him with a flash of hope that died as quickly as it came. Meanwhile the war followed him home, night terrors, sudden rages, the ache of missions unfinished. He re-enlisted partly to numb the emptiness, but every deployment only deepened the silence. Then, 4 years later, a lead. A retired cop turned PI phoned at midnight. Found her. Indianapolis. New name, new life. Luke arrived in Indiana under a cold March drizzle. The address was a modest blue-trimmed house on a cul-de-sac. Through the rain-streaked window he saw Megan laughing at a dinner table with a man he'd never met. 3 children sat beside her, older now, but unmistakably his kids. Heart pounding, Luke knocked. The door opened. Megan froze, color draining. "Luke," she whispered. The man stepped forward, protective. "Megan? Who is this?" "I'm her husband," Luke said, voice hoarse. The words detonated the room. What followed blurred, a storm of accusations, Megan's tears, the stranger's clenched fists. Finally, when the children were upstairs, Megan's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Luke, they're not yours. They never were." At first he thought it was cruelty, a desperate lie. But she explained, years before his first deployment, she'd reconnected with an old boyfriend. The children, every one of them, were that man's. Luke felt the floor tilt. Memories. First steps, bedtime stories, the birth certificates he'd signed, shattered like glass. That night Luke sat in his truck, rain drumming the roof, a soldier trained for combat but unarmed against betrayal this intimate. He would later tell his counselor it was the first time he truly understood what it meant to be lost, not on a battlefield, but in the ruins of trust. And the worst revelation was still to come. Rain hammered the windscreen as Luke Harrington sat motionless in his truck. The dashboard clock clicked past midnight. Every memory he'd built, the first ultrasound, the tiny hand gripping his finger, the bedtime stories whispered before deployment, now felt counterfeit. He started the engine, then killed it. Started again. Stopped. A soldier trained to act suddenly had nowhere to go. The following days unfolded in fragments. Luke checked into a budget motel off the interstate, staring at a ceiling mottled with water stains. He skipped meals, replayed Megan's words. "They're not yours," until they hollowed him out. On the third day, a local detective knocked. "Sir, your wife, Megan, called. She wants to arrange supervised visits if you'd like to see the kids." Luke almost laughed. Visits? To children he'd raised but who shared none of his blood. He felt a wave of nausea. "Tell her I need time," he said, though he wasn't sure time meant anything anymore. Nightmares came like ambushes. Afghanistan flashed behind his eyelids, mortar fire, the thud of boots in dust. But the faces were wrong, his squad mates blurred into the 3 children he'd loved, calling him dad as they disappeared into smoke. The army had taught Luke to survive the unthinkable. But this was different. There was no mission plan, no extraction team. Just an endless ache and a single question: who am I if everything I fought for was a lie? A fellow veteran finally convinced him to see a therapist at the VA hospital in Indianapolis. That's where he met Dr. Marcus Jones, a calm presence with warm brown eyes and the patience of someone who had heard 1,000 variations of pain. Luke sat across from him, fists clenched. "I've been shot at. Lost friends. But this," his voice cracked. "This broke me." Marcus nodded, letting the silence settle before he spoke. "Combat teaches you control. Betrayal steals it. Let's start with what you can reclaim." Session after session, Luke poured out the story: the airport emptiness, the frantic years of searching, the doorway confrontation, the revelation that shredded his identity. Marcus listened without judgment, occasionally guiding him back when anger threatened to consume the room. One evening, weeks into therapy, Marcus asked a question Luke hadn't considered. "Luke, when you think of those children, do you remember their DNA or the moments you shared?" The words landed like a slow detonation. He thought of teaching Emily to ride a bike, of Jason's crooked grin when he scored his first goal, of bedtime prayers whispered with tiny fingers laced in his. "They're still your memories," Marcus said gently. "No test can erase them." But acceptance wasn't linear. Luke drove past the blue-trimmed house more than once, heart pounding. He never knocked. He wasn't ready, maybe never would be. Months later, Luke wrote a letter to the children. "I don't know what you've been told. I don't know if you want me in your life. But every story I told you, every hug, every moment, was real. That can't be taken from us." He sealed it but kept it in his duffel bag, a quiet act of hope. Marcus helped Luke see that love is not ownership and fatherhood is more than genetics. Healing didn't mean forgetting, it meant choosing what to carry forward. Luke began volunteering at a local veterans outreach, helping others navigate the chasm between war and home. One crisp autumn morning, while leading a group hike for younger vets, he realized the raw edge of his rage had softened. The loss remained, but it no longer defined him. Luke never resumed contact with Megan. Through mutual friends he heard the children were thriving, and that was enough. "I thought finding the truth would kill me," he told Marcus during their final session. "But maybe it just forced me to find my truth." Marcus offered a small, knowing smile. "Sometimes the battlefield we survive is the one inside." Luke left the office into a pale winter sun, not whole, not the same, but standing. Luke's journey reminds us that bloodlines don't dictate the meaning of love or the weight of memory. Healing isn't about erasing betrayal, it's about reclaiming the parts of ourselves that no one can counterfeit. And for anyone grappling with heartbreak or deception, Luke's story is a quiet testament: survival isn't only for soldiers. It's for anyone who chooses to keep walking when the ground has given way.